Will Dame and Giannis be the best duo in the NBA?
No, individually, they might be the two best players. So if you look at all the duos individually, but I think the best duo is going to be Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic.
As you guys know, when it comes to Shannon Sharpe and his NBA takes, I rarely if ever agree with him. When it comes to LeBron takes, we couldn't be more polar opposites. But looking at who Shannon picked as the best duo in the NBA currently, I gotta agree with him. As Shannon in that opening said pretty clearly, he's taking Jokic and Murray, the defending NBA champion duo, over Giannis and Dame. And look, I think that take right now should be pretty obvious, as Murray and Jokic have been together since 2017 and are a known commodity. And as good as we think Dame and Giannis will be, there's always a learning curve for these duos and the teams they go to, as even the most adaptable players, easiest players to play with, have that major learning curve, whether it be Kevin Durant and Steph Curry, or D-Wade and LeBron James. And for a lot of NBA analysts, one thing they've been talking about really all week is how good the Dame and Giannis pick and roll will be. The keyword will be. As right now in Denver already, we have a proven duo that dominates in the exact same way. As last year in the playoffs, for 4 straight rounds, Jokic and Murray killed everyone with a simple 2-man pick and roll. And looking at the actual numbers, Jamal Murray, as a pick and roll ball handler, averaged 9.7 points and ranked 3rd in the NBA. And shooting percentage wise, out of any top 10 player, had the highest percentage. Now looking at Jokic as the roll man, just like Murray, ranked 3rd in the NBA in scoring at 4.1 points per game. And out of any top 10 pick and roll man scorer, Jokic, just like Murray, ranked 1st in effective field goal percentage. And looking past the actual stats and just on the court play watching the games, Jokic and Murray, to any basketball fan, you can see their unspoken chemistry and just the way they communicate really non-verbally, knowing exactly what the other player is going to do. And for Denver last year, if it was late in the shot clock, they were on a scoring drought, the old reliable pick and roll with Jokic and Murray was always their go-to. And for someone like Jamal, the lethal scorer he is, I can't tell you how many step back threes he hit out of the pick and roll. And for someone like Jokic, the roll man, if he gets that mismatch in the post off the roll, he's going to get an easy 2 points or identify the double team and find an open shooter. The Jamal Jokic pick and roll is virtually unstoppable. And in terms of trust factor, I trust Jokic in the post really more than any player in the entire NBA. As again, he can score at will or create shots for open teammates. And staying with that post scoring ability, looking at last year's playoffs in this category, the top 3 scorers in the post were Jokic, Embiid, and Giannis in that order. Now of course, all these guys' stats are pretty impressive, and of course the volume is definitely similar. But for Jokic, there's one thing that stands out, and that's his efficiency. As compared to the other 2 players, he shoots 10% better than Giannis and 13% better than Joel. The offensive versatility of Jokic, the efficiency, it really is unheard of, as he can score in the paint, the mid-range, or take it out to the 3-point line, compared to someone like Giannis, who gets roughly 80% of his points in transition or in the paint. Now, looking at Stephen A. Smith, one of the worst NBA analysts we have, of course, he disagreed with Shannon and had Dame and Giannis as the actual best duo.
Here's why I would tell you, respectfully, however, that you are wrong. It's going to be Dame and Giannis because of the locomotive that Giannis is on a night-in, night-out basis on both ends of the floor. See, we think about Jokic, we see his passing ability, we see his shot-making ability. As unorthodox as he is, he's just incredibly unstoppable. It's unbelievable to watch. The flip side, however, is that defensively, at times, he is a liability. He is not as formidable.
Now, stopping it right there, the Jokic defensive liability narrative, I thought that it died in last year's playoffs. And look, I'm not calling Jokic an elite defender, David Robinson 2.0. All I'm saying is this kind of defense is not a liability. The same way I'd say Steph Curry isn't a great defender, but isn't a negative to his overall team. And Jokic, unlike Steph defensively, is an elite defensive rebounder. That aspect alone right there makes him, at worst, a neutral defender. And I do find it pretty funny Stephen A. Smith brings up defense for Jokic. But for Dame Lillard, it's not mentioned once in this clip. As Dame last year, compared to superstars, star players, guards, forwards, centers, was an awful defender by every metric. As in defensive win shares, he ranked 284th. If there's any defensive liability in these duos, it's definitely Dame Lillard and not Nikola Jokic. And staying on Dame for 1 second, him being in his early 30s, he's still a great offensive player and offensive superstar. But I gotta ask you guys, what is the last truly meaningful game Dame played when it came to the postseason? It has to be back in like 2019, the West Finals, possibly Game 3 or Game 4. It's been that long since Dame Lillard played a meaningful playoff game. My point being, Jokic and Murray just last year played a handful of meaningful games and won the championship in the process. And looking at Jamal Murray, who I wouldn't say is better than Dame, but playoff-wise, is one of the best risers in the playoffs we've ever seen. As last year, averaged 26, 7, and 6 on 47, 40, and 93 splits. Compared to 2019 Dame Lillard, his deepest playoff run in his career, you could argue Murray actually had the more impressive and better overall run. Again, that's just me. And many forget Jamal in the West Finals versus Los Angeles. He was leading scoring that series out of both teams, outscoring Jokic, LeBron, and Anthony Davis. And when it came to fourth quarter play, he was simply ridiculous. As for that series, he averaged 10.8 points per game in the fourth quarter on simply absurd shooting splits. And I want to add one more thing in there. Murray last year for the first half of the season was kind of going half speed, kind of ramping up to playoff time and taking it really easy. But now, 2.5 years after the ACL, I expect 2024 to be prime Jamal Murray in his best form ever.
When I think about Giannis and what Giannis brings to the table on both ends of the floor, the locomotive that he is on the offensive side of the ball, the fact that he's got somebody like a Damian Lillard, who we would be calling the best point guard in the league if it were not for the existence of Steph Curry, who we would be looking at. I mean, you can make a legitimate argument when it comes to actually closing. He is just as lethal as Steph Curry.
So, stopping it right there, Stephen A. Smith, finally after all these years, gives Giannis props for being a top-tier defender. But I have to ask, why is he so late to the party when acknowledging Giannis' defense? As back in 2022, when they were debating Kevin Durant versus Giannis, Stephen A. not once brought the defensive gap between both those players. Kinda weird how defense, it's brought up sometimes in some debates, but other times it's downplayed and even downright dismissed. And like Stephen A. said in that clip, Dame Lillard, he is an elite closer, and for the Bucks I would imagine their go-to guy in the fourth quarter for big-time shots. But looking at the Jokic and Murray duo, their Denver team, last year in the fourth quarters, I think they're a tad overlooked at how great they were. As compared to the other 16 playoff teams, they ranked 6th in scoring, 1st in field goal percentage, 1st in rebounds, 2nd 3 percentage, 3rd in plus minus, and 4th in assists. And by running that pick and roll, having Jamal go ISO, Jokic in the post, when it came to fourth quarter play in the crunch time moments, Denver got a good look any time they wanted to. And if you compare Jokic versus Giannis, of course, vastly different players. But Giannis late in games, we've seen it numerous times, he can be slowed down ever so slightly due to his brute force and his style of play. Compared to someone like Jokic, if he gets double teamed, triple teamed, is forced to shoot the ball from deep, he can do that and read defenses much better than Giannis. And like I said last year, when it came to Embiid versus Jokic, I'm going to say the exact same thing for Giannis versus Jokic. We're looking at these two players. The defensive gap, I would argue, is just as big as the passing and playmaking gap. And the last thing I'm going to leave you guys with is kind of eye-opening. Looking at last year's playoffs en route to the championship, Jamal and Jokic as a duo averaged 56.1 points per game, 19.2 boards, 16 points, 6 assists on 51, 42, and 85 splits. That is near perfection for a championship duo. And that's why going into 2024, I'm taking Jokic and Jamal over Giannis and Dame until further notice. As always, thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.